Hello and welcome to Sacred Psychology, the podcast for misfits and mystics. Here, neuroscience and spirituality go hand in hand. Join me, Tamara Powell, on a no-holds-barred adventure outside the box, because that's where all the truly great shit happens anyway. Welcome back to Sacred Psychology. I'm your host, Tamara Powell. Now, before we move into today's conversation, I want to let you in on an incredible offer I've got going on. My ever-popular Iconic Integration self-study course is getting a major facelift. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool to pass on some ridiculous savings before I relaunch it? Normally, this course sells for $144, but right now, I'm offering it at just $44. Based on IFS, or Internal Family Systems Therapy, this course packs all the punch of modern neuroscience and neuroemotional release in an easy-to-use self-study format that will give you radical results fast. You can learn how to channel the parts of you that are needed for every situation in life, love, or business. You'll also identify the parts of you that need healing and learn to offer yourself the necessary gifts for growth. And my hope is that you will, by the time we're done with this 28-day journey, feel amazing in your own skin and radiate the love, compassion, fierceness, and sex appeal you know you have. Guys, my clients have raved about this method for years. Heather said it was the best money she has spent on herself in years. Charlotte wrote that this is one of my favorite things Tamara has ever offered, besides our one-on-one sessions. I grew so much and have revisited it several times since. April writes, Tamara's Iconic Integration course is amazing. Let me tell you what, this course has me identifying all sorts of people in my life who, quote, run the show, so to speak, in my head. Every day, it seems like a new person pops up during the exercises. It is truly helping me dissect who shapes my inner thoughts throughout the day and how they influence my decisions. Thank you, Tams. And Rachel wrote, so worth the investment. I haven't even finished. I've been taking it a bit at a time, and I know I can pace myself, but I'm about 3/4 through, and it has been life-changing. Hashtag no regrets whatsoever. Hashtag best investment of 2017. Hashtag no joke. Hashtag Tamara and IFS for the win. Guys, here's how it works. For those opting in, I will email you a daily audio training and written journal prompts discussing overall themes and stories from my own life and clients that I have used this incredibly transformative method with. Each week, we will explore a different category of parts, personas, or sides of our personality, if you will. There's nothing like it on the market right now, and you'll have unlimited evergreen access to it forever. So if you're interested, head on over to ariatherapy.com, that's ARYA therapy.com, and hit the Iconic Integration tab on the drop-down menu, or just click the link in the show notes. Whew, thanks for hanging in there with me. And now, on with today's show. My guest today is Jenn Taylor. She is the mother to a tribe. No, literally, 18. 13 of them permanent, as she likes to say. She's also the author of the book, Hello, My Name is Warrior Princess. It's a self-help memoir about her life growing up in dysfunction, from the emotional, physical, and sexual abuse, as well as their effects that plagued Jenn. Now she's a public speaker, a blogger, a podcaster to Jenn Taylor Rerouting Podcast, and she's a runner, healthy lifestyle enthusiast, and an online coach for future authors. Whew, hot damn. No, seriously, hanging out with this chick can make you feel like you've been moving through life at a snail's pace. She has this uncanny way of making you want to kick it up a notch. No regrets. I cannot wait for you to hear her story. I just have this inkling that you're going to walk away feeling completely inspired. So without further ado, I give you the one, the only, the ever incomparable Jenn Taylor. Hey, Jenn.
Hi.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being willing to come on and share. Really, you've got quite the inspirational story going on.
Thank you. It's interesting when it's your story. It's just your story. You know, I don't think it's anything exceptional or exciting. It's just mine.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't necessarily, I mean, I hear other people's stories and I think, oh my gosh.
I love that.
How the hell do you do that? But, you know, we're all unique. So thank you. I like my story.
Yes. And I can't wait for the listeners to really dive into a piece of it, as I've been stalking you for the last 2 days or so and following all your wanderings on the interwebs.
All right.
Yeah.
That's sexy.
It is, right? I'm glad you think so. I've got so many questions. But
okay.
For those who don't know you, you definitely do wear a lot of different hats. You're mom of a tribe, as you put it, and it totally is a tribe. You've got, before I even go any further, let's just explain, how many kiddos have you had and are going through? Because it's a bit of a complicated ball of wax there.
It is. I think there's 18 total that I keep track of. There are 5 that I had I had one that was a foreign exchange student from Germany that came 15 plus years ago, almost 16 years ago, that I've never lost track of. There are 2 that aged out of foster care. There's one that was a stepdaughter from a past relationship. There was one that I had very long-term in foster care who's still in the system, actually, but I keep track as much as I possibly can. So there's those 5 that I keep track of, but they're all older or they're all out of my house, but I kind of have my finger on the pulse, so to speak. When you do foster care, and I did foster care for 12 years, and I was involved in it for about 20, the kids that don't reunify with their parents, but their parental rights are never terminated, so they're never available for adoption. There's this gray area. So for 3 out of those 5 that kind of grew up and moved on, I was pretty much all they had, sort of. They always still hope that their parents will get their shit together, and they always call me mom, and I'm kind of there when they need me. And so, if that makes sense. So those are 5 of the 18. The other 13, I call them permanent residents because I have paper on them. That's totally not politically correct because I'm not. They're papered. So they're permanent residents. And 5 of them were adopted. Right. And the other 8 were biological. So out of the 8 that are biological, I was pregnant 7 times. I gave birth to 4. So I lost 3. And then I'm divorced, and my partner, we've been together for years. We've never gotten married. We haven't gotten around to it yet.
You've been busy. It's okay.
Yeah, I don't know. His wife died, and he had 4 children. So it's interesting when you have sort of foster kids and adopted kids. And I haven't done foster care in 8 years now, but you know, my kids grew up with foster kids kind of in and out. Those 5 that aged out sort of with us, or, you know, the straggling 5 of the 18. There were a lot of kids that came through that didn't stay as long-term or didn't connect as much. But my kids were very used to, you know, having not quite a revolving door of kids. It wasn't quite like that, but having kids sort of come and some go and some stay permanently. And, you know, so when the question I dislike the most is, which ones are yours?
Oh, ow. What in the ever-loving hell?
Well, you know, if you came to my house and let's say 12 or 13, 10 even of the kids were here, and you walked in, one thing people are curious about is like which ones I gave birth to, as if those 4 of if there were 10 out of the 18, you know, right, as if those are like, I love them more, I connect with them more, and I get
how legitimatized or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I think people are curious, just like you said, let's have the breakdown, right? People are curious about like, what's a breakdown and how does it work? And I'm telling you, if I lined up even a picture, if I took a picture of every one of the 18 today, headshots, and I laid them out on the table, and I had you come in and I said, pick which 4 I gave birth to, you would never get it right. Never. And, you know, I mean, I was open to adopting any race or nationality. I don't have any African-American kids or Hispanic kids. I do have 2 Native Alaskan kids.
Oh.
And you still would get it wrong. I can guarantee there's no way in hell. But what my kids don't like is that if they hear you ask, which ones are yours? Well, then that means there are some that are not mine or that are less than, or that there's this hierarchy of love. And I can tell you, and anybody who's adopted before, because clearly I was pregnant 7 times. So I'm having my own children while I'm adopting other people's children, and I have foster kids, and there's some step kids involved. And I have, Dane, my partner, his wife died. So what does that mean about them? Like, I don't love them much because they have a mom who's dead. It's just ridiculous. But it makes them feel like, is there some hierarchy? So I made sure in the hierarchy, my kids that are adopted, if one of the adopted kids and one of the biological kids are talking, my adopted kids will say, yeah, well, mom chose me. She didn't get to pick you.
I had a feeling that might come through at some point. Yes.
And it's become, I wanted my kids to know where they came from and be able to ask questions. I'm very, very open about all subjects in my house. And so adoption and foster care, and that was like the norm in my house. So my kids, Kezia, for example, is adopted, and Kezia will say, no, I don't like pineapple. And Brianna, who's 26, who's my first biological child, will say, how can you like pineapple? What are you, adopted? And Kezia will be like, yeah, I am adopted. And Brianna's like, oh shit, I forgot. She's like, don't worry, I was 2. And I'm like, no, you weren't. You were. I have the video. And she's like, Mom, shh, I was totally adopted. So, there's this great playfulness about where the kids came from. And I basically what they've done is just cut me out of the loop entirely. And so don't ask which ones are mine. They'll all raise their hand. I'll look at them and go, which ones of you are mine? And they'll all raise their hand. I'm like, damn. I was hoping some of you would drop off or something.
I just love that even in the opening snippets of your multifaceted story, it really shines through that you're open to love in all of its forms and mothering in all of its forms.
Yeah, thank God. I don't know where that came from, except that I didn't know. I don't think any of us know how to parent, and there's no parenting book that will reach all of us because
it's true.
You have different kids, right? Your kids, you can't parent them the same. You can love them all the same, but you don't parent them the same because they're different. And you and I are different people, so we don't mother our kids the same, even if we're both really great moms. And our situations change, even if we just are moving to a different house or changing a job. And so, parenting books in my mind are kind of a fallacy because there's no 8-ball. There's no way to figure out how to do this the right way. There's no right way. There's lots of mistakes, and it's like a dartboard. You're like, close your eyes and shoot.
With sticks.
Yeah. So, I grew up in a lot of dysfunction myself, and I knew how to not do things, but that didn't at all mean just because I have a list of what not to do meant that I knew what to do. So I think I'm very blessed at just thinking, well, my kids are not my friends. Don't ever think that my laid back attitude, I am their mom until they are adults and they move out, and we kind of morph the relationship into something like, well, I'm always your mom. However, you're now an adult, so I can give you mom advice, but really we are more friends kind of when they're adults because I don't have to parent them in like a don't stick your finger in the light socket sort of way.
Thank goodness they do grow out of that a little bit.
Yeah, I'm out of that. But, I'm not their friend. I'm here to parent them, and I'm trying to do the best job that I can, and I'm going to give it 150% every day because that's who I am. But 150% today might be 200%. It may look like I'm on, drugs, and tomorrow it may be a fraction because I'm sick. It's still 150%, but we all know sometimes we just have more oil in our lamp, so to speak, than other days. And so giving your all doesn't mean that you're always able to give a lot. So I think I'm pretty kind to myself, I guess, that I'm really trying here.
And I do think that really helps. You alluded to the fact that you had a rough childhood growing up. And I think that that's actually an understatement of the year, right? Of listening to parts of your story. And I couldn't help but wonder reading that if if that didn't actually help prepare you for this journey that you chose of motherhood.
Yes, it did. I was 15 in an OBGYN's office. I hadn't started my period. I was almost 16. And for whatever reason, that OBGYN said, you're probably going to have a really hard time having kids and you may have to go through infertility. I don't know. I mean, still, I'm 47 and I don't know what specifically he felt, what he thought was going on that he would have said that to me.
Mm-hmm.
But he planted a seed. I grew up in a lot of dysfunction. So I thought, well, hook or crook, kind of. I want to have a family, and I don't want it to be a family like I came from. I don't want to perpetuate this cycle. My third grade teacher was the one that made the most pivotal difference in my life. And when you look through your life, when I wrote the book about my childhood, the hardest part, not that, see, when things are hard, that doesn't mean that it's like stressful and awful and terrible and lightning stormish,
Yeah, and thank you for pointing that out, especially.
Yeah.
We are talking psychology here. That's important for people to hear.
Okay, yeah, right. Okay, so you get me.
Yeah.
So it was hard in the sense that I had already come to terms with all the bad stuff that happened to me. I was molested, I was raped, I was beat, I was neglected. There were a lot of things that I had gone through.
Name it. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I come to terms with those things. So when people say this must have been really hard for you to write about, it was hard for me to be able to tap into the emotion in a way that you as the reader were experiencing it for your first time, because I had kind of come to terms with it. So that was that tapping into my emotions from the past was I wanted to make sure I did well at that, but it wasn't difficult because I had gone to therapy and I'd come to terms with that. What was hard was I outlined the people in my life that made a positive difference, that were pivotal to me in a positive and meaningful way. And I contacted every one of them to ask permission for me to tell the story of them, predominantly from my perspective. But if it had been you, I would have said, can I include you in my book? And you would have said yes. And when I wrote the chapter about you, I would email it to you and say, I would love your feedback. One, because your perspective is different than mine, and one, because you're like, oh yeah, and remember this, and maybe, so we could kind of take this walk down memory lane, and it kind of spurred my memories, and I got to see the situation a little bit from your perspective also.
It's a great format.
I could rewrite it a little bit and tweak it and make it a richer read because I had that dynamic. But what I had the privilege to do was to thank every one of those people, and that is hard. It's hard in a way where you feel tremendously blessed, but those are people that really, really made a difference. And when you look back at your life, if you wrote down every person you could think of that was positive and had a conversation with every single one of those people, that's emotionally very overwhelming and difficult to navigate, even though the content is very positive. And it was those role models that kind of helped me. So anyway, I know I just tangented for you or on you, but when that doctor at 15 made that comment about I would need infertility, it planted the seed for foster care. And I did go through infertility, and I obviously did get pregnant, but I knew once I had my first child that I was going to do foster care. And what I was blessed with was every time I opened a child's folder and read through their information, I had been through everything they had been through, maybe at different levels. I wasn't locked in a closet for days at a time, for example. And that's something that I read in one of the files. But I knew what it was like to feel alone and in a dark place, and to be afraid and to be lonely and to feel not worth it. And so I could completely relate to what these kids were going through.
Yes, that's what I mean. I can't help but think that you were prepared even at a young age, whether or not we believe in predestination. What I see in your story is an ability to take these setbacks, and as I've recently have shared on Facebook, turning them into a comeback.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your psyche seemed to have taken all of these tools of what not to do and what did inspire me and who spoke to me and how did that make me feel, and then bring that into these experiences with all of these children who have come either through your womb or through adoption or through your blended family. And I just think it's so lovely.
Thank you. It's hard. And I will never minimize, it's easy to say it is lovely and it is a blessing. And I have loved the entire journey, but it is hard. One of my kids that I adopted him at 2, and he's 19 and a half now. And back then, 17 and a half years ago, we didn't really know a whole lot, or it wasn't as discussed about autism.
Mm-hmm.
And he's autistic, and he's a higher functioning autism. But, when you're asked to do foster care and adopt, you're asked what you're not comfortable taking. And I am here to tell you that is something that you really need to do, because every one of us has limitations. And I didn't want to take fetal alcohol syndrome, and I never did take fetal alcohol syndrome that we knew of. But my son has autism with fetal alcohol syndrome markers, which means when you do a psych evaluation on him, a bunch of stuff pops up that's very highly likely that he had some level of fetal alcohol effect. He doesn't have the syndrome, but that, and I know the birth mother, so I would have to not disagree with that.
Sure.
But had I known about autism 18 years ago, that would have been something I would have said I wouldn't have taken.
Right.
Because it's so fucking hard.
Mm-hmm.
And he's higher functioning. He's moderate. And does that mean I don't want him, or I don't love him, or I don't think it was a blessing, or that I have regret? No, absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm very honest, blatantly enough to tell you that definitely I would have, without question, when he was 2 and I had read the file, said, I don't think this is a good fit.
Yes, and thank you for normalizing that for all of the mothers out there, regardless of whether they birthed these children or not, whether their children are neurotypical or not. It's hard, like you said.
It's hard. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, I had the luxury with I had a luxury in my relationship. So those 4 children, I had the luxury with the 5 children I adopted and the children I took in as foster care that stayed long-term, of saying, this isn't going to work. When you give birth to a child,
right.
They're yours, and there's nothing wrong with that. And you know what? People will say, well, how did you do it? Well, was there a plan B? I didn't know I could just cut and run. Was that an option? Because in my mind, it wasn't. So how did I do it? One day at a time. I mean, you deal with whatever is put in front of you as it's put in front of you. And I never thought, well, what if this happens? And what if that happens? I mean, we have a fire escape plan. So you want to avoid disaster. But otherwise, you just kind of wing it, and you don't know what things you're going to be faced with and what you're not. So we all kind of parent one day at a time. We go through life one day at a time. And if you have a super positive attitude and you're pretty laid back and your approach is like, well, we're just going to have to deal with this now. Okay, this is plan B. We've arrived. Then I think it goes better, because you can't, there's so much we cannot control, that if you're making yourself crazy over that, you're spinning your wheels. So what things do you potentially have some amount of control over? The biggest one being your attitude and your behavior. And that doesn't mean that even with that philosophy that you're always going to do it well. Mm-hmm. But you have a better chance at being successful. And my feeling was really, I never thought, oh yeah, let's have 13 kids, or let's take in 18, or there was no grand plan. It's not a race I'm trying to win. It's not like, I beat you.
You didn't plan that out at 22, Jen? No.
Oh my God. No. I would have run screaming for the hills if somebody had said, oh, and by the way, because you can't imagine it before it's happening. And the kids generally, not always, but generally come one at a time. And so you're dealing with a situation kind of one at a time, or as it happens, not,
right.
Hey, here you go. You have 18 kids today. Figure it out. Good luck cooking. And I think at the most 4 years ago, we had 12 living at home. And I'm pretty sure we've spiked to 12 and gone up and down. But that's pretty much the cap as far as the number of kids that were actually living in the household at the same time. I can tell you that this summer, we will be down to 3, and it will have been 20 years since I've only had 3 kids. So, I mean, like there's some statistics that I'll actually be like, how long has it been since there have been only 3 kids? And so I'll have to, think back and 20 years. So for me to have like 5 kids in the house is freaking joyous. It's a piece of cake because 4 years ago there were 12 at home. So
I love that because I hear you basically saying that it's been helpful at times to stop and, think about what are the tools that you're prepping for yourself, with your daily schedule and a positive mindset. I mean, shit, you just can't go wrong with that no matter who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, there are days that you wake up that you feel terrible or you're stressed about something or finances aren't good or you have a move coming. I mean, there's a million things that can happen in life where you wake up and you think, oh God, I want this day to just be done. I want this to be tomorrow morning, And we all have moments like that, but remaining positive through most of it. I had a friend that asked me once, like, do you always have a plan B? I'm like, there's so many letters in the alphabet. I mean, let's not stop there because what is the alternative? Being stuck in plan A and hating your life. If that's the alternative, I'm not willing to do that.
No, it's about going with the flow and rolling with the punches.
You kind of have to. And it's a lot easier when you're rolling with them than when you're resisting that.
You absolutely do have to. That's the interesting paradox of anxiety and depression, which is something that I want to also ask you about. Because when people think that they're not rolling with their punches, they're still coming up with coping mechanisms that are just typically very unhealthy.
Right. So what do you want to know about
that? So, well, you write that you have learned firsthand how devastating it can be. So I would just love to hear some of your experiences and the lessons that you've learned as a result of it.
I have never really experienced anxiety or depression, which is
watched it.
I've been surrounded by it. I mean, literally, there have been chunks of my life I feel inundated, and I think that I either am there to learn something about it or I'm decent at being the outsider. So my sister had tremendous anxiety. She's 3 years younger than I am. So I was the big sister and I was the protector. I was the oldest. I was the one that I got it all done.
A parentified child. Yes.
Right. Very and in a dysfunctional home where there's abuse, I was very much parentified. So she had anxiety. Now I had no idea as a kid growing up what it was, but I knew I could try to help make her feel better. And as my life progressed, I've been in relationships where there's been a lot of depression. And now, and you can please jump in. I trained foster parents for a few years to work with treatment level kids, and I taught suicide awareness. And so you can be suicidal, you can be depressed and not suicidal, and you can be suicidal and not necessarily depressed. They don't know.
Absolutely.
Right? So, I mean, I've been with a partner who was suicidal. I've been with a partner who was depressed, who was the same person, but those were separate incidences. And I've been around people that have had anxiety. I have a daughter that had a suicide attempt. And thankfully, it was not successful about 1.5 years ago. And I've been with partners that suffer from anxiety. And I think it's not that I don't want to say it's not a big deal because it's a very big deal to them. And there are moments where I don't particularly love to deal with someone who's experiencing a lot of anxiety. But I'd say 90% of my attitude is it isn't a big deal to me that they have. I'm just cool with it. It's okay. I will do everything that I can to help. And if that means staying out of the way, that's fine. If that means a back rub or a hug, that's fine. I have a daughter that has you'd never know it. You'd meet her. I mean, again, as far as picking people up in a lineup, you can never see it. But when she and I talk, I know that her anxiety is almost socially crippling for her. And so I said to her, because she's almost an adult, I brought her to therapy, and I don't generally, for the most part, there's a difference between parenting and telling your kids they have to do something. And then there's parenting with discussion. Like, I really think that therapy would be helpful, and this is why. And I'd like you to try it.
I love that approach.
That's a lot of my approach. So she did therapy. She tried acupuncture, which, I mean, acupuncture can relieve anxiety, but getting it done gave her so much anxiety.
Oh, poor baby.
Oh, great. So we basically tried a lot of modalities, and I finally looked at her and I said, you need to start studying it more yourself. I'm out of suggestions, and I don't want you to live you're 17 now. I don't want you to spend the rest of your life feeling this way. And it's not something that can be fixed necessarily. You need to learn how to cope within it. And so you study. So at first she studied, apps on your phone, and we studied things that you can wear, like almost a Fitbit type thing that will alert you if your heart rate starts to increase. And she's like, that's not the thing for me. Don't waste $120 on it. And she asked, can I go to hypnotherapy?
Yes.
And I said, yes, but you're responsible for finding the hypnotherapist, which she did. And so, I mean, sometimes my experience with anxiety is that even the same person can feel differently from one anxiety attack to the next.
So true.
And my daughter, who had the suicide attempt, wasn't suffering from depression. And so you kind of have to, and her sister, the one that has anxiety, is the one that realized what was going on. And I was taking her to the doctor's office, and my daughter said, I want to go with you, which my kids are so supportive of one another that I would have never questioned. If you want to go with us to the doctor, there's like no question about that. It's just,
wow,
more supportive. But what I didn't know is that she had figured out what was going on and wanted to make sure. And she told her sister, either you're telling them or I am. But I figured it out in the meantime. So we were in the doctor's office, and as she's asking her, like, what's the matter with her stomach, and going down the list, I looked at her and I said, I'm pretty sure I know what's going on, and I hope that I'm wrong. But I know we're missing something, and it's not medical. So I'm going to say it out loud, or you are. And so I kind of put the pieces together as the doctor was questioning her. And, and so you have to kind of just be as tuned in as you can, knowing that there's a ton of stuff going on in life, and we're not always, you don't know to always be as tuned in. So I've been surrounded by anxiety, depression, suicide, feelings of suicide, thoughts of suicide, suicide attempts, my entire life. And I don't know, wouldn't it be wonderful if I was some sort of barometer for that? That's very humble of me. Like, yeah, I'm the barometer. I think I handle it fairly decently. And I'm glad that I handle it fairly decently, because in that way it's not a big deal to me. There's no stigma behind it. But that 10% of the time that I don't want to do, there have been times when, I haven't been laid back and cool with it all. And I don't think that's a bad time. There are times that I've gotten angry.
Right. And rightfully so, and probably very helpful in the moment. Sometimes we do need to come to Jesus, wake us up, shake the system a little bit of a moment. I just so appreciate you, Jenn, though, for really normalizing it for both the caregivers or the loving partners of someone struggling with mental or emotional distress, but also for the ones going through it, that, an anxiety attack doesn't look the same, person to person to person, and neither does depression.
Right.
So it is so wonderful to see, again, I hate what you went through as a child, but to see the beautiful outgrowth of that you are just this non-judgmental, warm, loving, accepting space for all the things. It really, I'm sure, is giving hope to a lot of the listeners that are like, oh, it's okay to love someone with distress. Because I can't tell you how many parents and couples I see where the partner is just freaking the fuck out, and for good reason, and they feel stigma and shame themselves. How many moms right now are walking around with a child who's going through mental or emotional distress, and they're blaming themselves and they don't want to talk about it. And here you are going, girl, I've been surrounded by it my entire life. So what? It's okay. What do you need from me? A back rub? I love that.
Yeah.
I'm going to go away. I'll come back.
Yeah. One thing is that you have to ask the questions that are hard to ask. And here's the thing with suicide is the more you ask the question, are you having suicidal thoughts? Are you thinking about killing yourself? It doesn't make the person think, well, no, but maybe I should be. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
It makes it a normal conversation. And things with depression, is this something where you're feeling depressed, or are you just like pissed off at work? Is this a down moment, or has the moment extended too long?
Mm-hmm.
I've never had depressive moments that have extended too long. I've had shitty moments in my day. I've had moments when I'm nervous. I've been public speaker on and off for 30 years. I get nervous going on the stage. Have I ever had an anxiety attack? No. I feel anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And some of it is happy excitement and anxiety. So that's not a good way to explain an anxiety attack to someone. Like, yeah, I felt anxiety. It made me happy and excited. No.
Well, it actually brings up a really good point that the brain can't tell the difference. And so it brings you back to your positive mindset tricks.
Right.
Actually, one of the interventions that we use as therapists is reminding people that your brain doesn't know the difference between happy excitement, I'm going on a roller coaster, or, oh my fucking God, there's a dinosaur behind me. Like,
right. Okay. So if you're talking fight or flight here, or so I understand what it feels like to feel a moment of anxiousness, or a moment where life sucks so bad, you want to shoot yourself in the foot. Like, I get that. My moments have never extended longer than that moment. I mean, really, I've had shitty moments in a day. I've had days that have sucked.
right.
But I still had good moments in those days too. And I think depression is something where that really shitty moment has extended, where there aren't really good moments in that day. Okay, so if you're having an extension of that and it's becoming a depressive situation, then we're having a different conversation. And I'm not licensed as a therapist. I can't help you in that way, but I can be there to a certain extent in a certain way.
Yes.
I'm there for you, but what I'm going to do is say, so what are you going to do about it? Mm-hmm. So I think sometimes I'm not the warmest fuzzy. I am the hug. I think everybody should be hugged. I cuddled my kids. I breastfed for 2 years. I co-slept. I homeschooled. I baked bread. I did all that shit.
Right.
I'm very warm, but there's a certain situation where I think, I don't know if my like warmest meter goes off or what. I'm like, look, if your life sucks that bad, I get why you want to kill yourself. Stop talking about it and either put your head up your ass or do it.
I have a lot of colleagues that are cheering right now, because what I hear is a woman saying, I love you too much to leave you there. Let's go.
Like, we need to do something, because I can't live in this space with you. I'm not willing to. I'm not able to. I will not do it. So you need to meet me somewhere else. And that's not in this depressive, suicidal space. You have a choice to pull your head out of your ass. Now that means not just flipping a switch. Maybe you need different help in different modalities.
Right.
Yoga,
whatever the things. Yes.
Whatever. I can't just say it and it happens, but either make a concerted effort to change the situation and your mindset and get the help that you need, or I get why you want to kill yourself, but stop threatening to do it.
It's manipulative.
If I'm going to find your bloody remains somewhere, because I'm not willing to live in that space. Either do it and put us all out of our misery, or get past it. I can't. I'm not going to live in this space. And that was years and years and years ago with a partner that I had, but that I was with, and that probably maybe wasn't the best way to handle it, but I know I hit this point of...
I just hear the pain in your voice, though, you know?
Yeah.
And you're in love with someone and they're just going back and forth and that pendulum swinging, and they're refusing to take the, necessary steps to get help. And whatever means works for them, like you said, yoga, meditation, meds, whatever, that I'll be there for you, but stop threatening. That's killing me.
Because I think that this life is pretty fucking awesome. And I've got one shot at it. And I don't know how long that shot's going to last, but I'd like to get the most out of it that I can. And I can't do that. It can't be a positive, beautiful, wonderful experience if you're living in that space.
And that says a lot coming from a woman with your background. So I think, whilst you may potentially have trolls who don't know you, who might accuse you of being flippant, if they took a second to really understand that, what you've come out of, and you can still say that this life is amazing and holds a lot for us, I believe you. Right.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not at all being flippant about it. I've experienced it with my children. I mean, my son with autism definitely has a tremendously high level of anxiety, which kind of goes hand in hand.
It does.
Separately, having kids that have that type of anxiety and having partners or friends with that sort of
Mm-hmm.
anxiety. And there's a point where I'm not an expert. I'm here in every way that I can be. And I'll help in any way that I can. But there is a point where I stop and something else or someone else has to take over that. So for example, when my daughter had a suicide attempt and the doctor's office transported her in the ambulance to the ER, which is protocol.
Mm-hmm.
And we were there for probably, 6 or 7 hours. And the social worker, like 3 a.m, comes down to the room and says, so physically she's cleared, all of her blood levels are coming back, her liver function, everything's coming back because she overdosed on pills. Everything's looking good. Are you comfortable taking her home? And I said, there's no fucking way this child's getting in my car, because I know from teaching suicide awareness that when a first attempt is unsuccessful and everybody's like, oh, we got this. We're here for you. We're getting you a therapy. We're all good. And you take a deep breath. The second set, if there is a second attempt, it is almost always 100% successful.
You're right.
And there's no way. I said, I cannot watch her. Okay, she's like I can give a level 8 in my house, and she's at a level 15 of what she needs.
Mm-hmm.
I can't bridge the gap of 8 to 15. So I said, I am driving her from this hospital to the program in town where she spent 10 days. And I literally had to peel her off of my body that next morning at 8 a.m.
Yeah.
We hung out in the ER till they were open. Literally had to peel her off of my body and hand her to the person who was holding her as she's sobbing and begging me not to leave her. And I said, this is what you need. I can't give you what you need, and this is what you need. And sometimes that was one of the lowest moments of my life, to take my daughter who had just had a suicide attempt, 12, 15 hours earlier, and peel her off my body and say, nope, I'm not the one who can help you right now. And I think in moments with depression and anxiety, my flippancy is me peeling that person off me and saying, yes, I can't help you right now. You need to get it from somewhere else. I can give you a level 8 care and you'll need a level 15.
Yes, I just wanted to point out the depth of love in that. And that is what we train people to do in the therapy clinics and at the hospitals and family centers is, it is similar to the interventions that you see on TV at times. It looks so harsh, but it's actually the wake-up call and asking them to partner with us in their own transformation, because we can't do it for them. You knew that you could only give level 8 care at that moment.
Yes. And level 8 care is fantastic.
It is. And we're grateful for it. Yes.
But if normally people need, like a normal person's like a 5 or a 6, and you have to know your limitations. It goes back to the same thing with that's probably one of my philosophies in life, is that you have to know what your own personal limitations are. And I think I've gotten very comfortable with my limitations. And I have friends ask me the greatest questions, but I had another friend that asked me, are you good at everything you do? And I said, yeah, because when I'm not good at it, I ask somebody else to do it. I mean,
preach louder for the people in the back. Yes.
I mean, shit, it's called a resource. And
yes, whether it's in business or in marriage or in parenting, know your role, stay in your lane.
Right. So if you're really, really good at something that I'm not, and I don't care, I don't know how to knit a blanket, but I really love Afghans. I'm not going to learn how because I have zero desire.
You and me both, sister.
You know what I mean? Why is it a bad thing to not be good at stuff? We're all not good at stuff. I'm thrilled that I'm not good at stuff. It takes the pressure totally off me. And that doesn't mean that sometimes we don't have to jump in and do stuff that we're not great at. But I'm very comfortable with what I am good at and with what I'm not good at and with what my learning curve is on some of those things. And if I can avoid it at all costs, I'm not going to do the things that I'm not good at, because not only am I doing something that I don't like or I like. Yeah,
no one wins.
No one wins, right? And then I'm robbing someone else of a blessing. If I could ask you to be an Afghan, and I am so thrilled that you can do that for me, isn't that a blessing to you?
Yes. I say this, and it's to the mental health providers listening too. They know, you need to know, just like when you were deciding on foster children, who's your best client? Who are you not well suited for? Who brings up countertransference for you? Come on now. Same thing when we're dating, and I tell it to my kids when they're picking friends,
Right. Right. So
I love that. Yeah.
I think it's not, I like to think that I have a lot of humility because there's a lot that I'm not good at, but I think I'm also okay with myself enough to say, well, but I am good at some stuff too. And if I can be a resource to you in those areas, then wouldn't that be cool? So I think there's a lot of balance there.
It brings me to one of my favorite sayings that you have on your website, which is triumph with love. Can you say more about that?
Yes. So in my book, I talk about Wonder Woman. Now, as a kid who was born in 1970, she was like, God, I mean.
Oh, yeah. She still is hot. And then now we have the new one, too.
The new one. God damn her.
All right.
So that was her whole, when Wonder Woman was being created in the 40s, the man that was creating her was telling his wife, and I don't remember all the names. It's something I'm not good at. So I'll kind of give you an overview of the story. He was discussing with his wife this new superhero they wanted him to create. And she said, well, if that's who this character is going to be, you should make it a woman. The lasso of truth. Okay. And the whole foundation of Wonder Woman was to triumph with love. So yeah, she's a badass with all these skills, but if you look at she has super strength and she's an Amazon and she's got great boobs and which are a weapon in and of themselves.
True story, bro. Yeah. True story. Yeah. Oh, fembot.
So, but that was her whole platform was to triumph with love. And that was the difference in her superhero character compared to other superhero characters. And she did have some great things like strength, like the other superheroes have, but she wanted people to be honest. And so it was kind of that. And it's interesting because I was 5'9". I think I'm 5'8" now because it's the incredible shrinking machine as you get older. I was 5'9" in high school. I'm curvy and athletic, and I've always been thin. And I was uncomfortable with my height because average women are like 5'4", 5'5", and I'm 5'9". I'm taller than most average men. And in a room of people, if I walk into a big room of adults.
Statuesque blonde.
I am, blonde hair, blue eyed, 5'9". So that was not the way. I wasn't comfortable drawing attention to myself that way. That's more of a sexual thing also. But I was uncomfortable with that because I wanted people to see me, this, broken, battered, bruised, beautiful person that I was trying to become. And they see your height, they see your boobs, they see all of that stuff. And so I would slouch. And it's interesting because Wonder Woman was an Amazon, and I was called Amazon in high school. And now the boy who called me Amazon in high school, I don't have any recollection of who he was, but I felt I wanted to shrink so badly because that felt so awful to me that I was an Amazon, like I was big and overbearing and like Sheena, warrior princess, let me come protect you, little man type. It could have been a compliment. Maybe
it really could have. I was just thinking that you hadn't come to terms with your inner Linda yet. Yes.
Yeah, no, I had not. And so it's interesting that she was such a dominant superhero and female figure and was called an Amazon. But when I was called an Amazon, I felt like I just wanted to shrink inside myself. And as I went to college and got a little older, and even in high school, as I was like, well, screw you. I mean, like, I can't stop the fact that I'm 5'9", so I might as well embrace it. And I started to slouch less in pictures. And then I kind of put it together, and I was like, oh my God, like,
hello.
I want to be called Wonder Woman, right? And then I kind of looked into Wonder Woman because I thought, well, that's sort of badass. And her whole platform was Triumph with Love. And so that's where that came from, is that, we can take all those negative things, being an Amazon or whatever they are, our baggage, and let's get something straight, regardless of where you came from. You could have a perfect upbringing with parents who loved each other and been married for 60 years and still come with a tremendous amount of baggage that you're carrying.
Absolutely.
We all have it. It's one, how we allow it to affect us, and two, what we do with it. And so it's totally cool to have baggage. Just recognize it. And, and something jumps out at me now. I know you talk about sexuality because I was molested in my first interact. My first time having sex was rape.
Yeah.
So someone asked me once, well, how I love sex. I want it every day. I'm very sexual person. That took a long time for me to be super comfortable and okay with. Now Dane will probably tell you I've gone the other way and I'm now obnoxious about it. But, but
good for you.
You're welcome. Yeah. But someone asked me, how do you separate the things that happened to you sexually that were very negative? And I had some pretty negative ones.
I'm sure.
With your sexuality being positive. And I said, I was on the phone with this person, go get a kitchen chair, bring the kitchen chair to your bedroom door, put the kitchen chair right outside your bedroom door, go in your bedroom and shut the door. Where's the kitchen chair? It's right outside. Well, that's where that person needs to live.
Amen.
You do not let them cross into your bedroom. They don't belong there.
Nope.
There is no negative sexuality allowed, and they need to remain. And if you need to leave a chair outside of your bedroom and
as a visualization, you do it.
Then you do it. I don't need to. I just know that part of my baggage sits outside in a chair. It is not allowed inside the house.
You deserve better, for every woman, every woman or man listening who's had his authenticity and essence stolen, robbed, misused, abused, all of that, that has no place in the present moment. So
it doesn't. And so that's Triumph with Love.
Thank you for that. Yes.
That's it's kind of taking the shit platter you've been served, and that's not within your control.
Right.
And that was done to you, and that was unavoidable, because a lot of stuff we do to ourselves, and that doesn't count because you do have control over that. But the things that happen that you have no control over, it's taking that baggage that you carry and lightening it up. It's putting it away. It's putting it where it belongs, in its place. You don't remove your baggage. You don't get rid. It's still there. I'm still a child who was molested. It just isn't allowed in places in my home at all.
It doesn't define you.
It does not serve me unless it can serve me in a positive way. So that's Triumph with Love.
I love it. And will that be part of your legacy, you think, of what you leave behind?
Oh, God, I hope so. Wouldn't that be a beautiful thing?
I think so.
As a mom yourself, when I became a parent for the first time, when Brianna was born, and she was like 7 months old, and it was her first Christmas. And Christmas had always been a very depressing time. And I realized somewhere between 17 when I graduated and 21 when she was born that, well, I wasn't depressed on Christmas. Christmas wasn't depressing necessarily to me, but it wasn't really I didn't really know what it was to me. And as she played with the wrapping paper in the boxes more than the things that she got at 7 months old, I thought, wow, I can make this anything that I want.
Yes. What a mindset shift.
Right? And so now I kind of always knew that, but when you have a child brought into it and you have all of that fierce protective love and you want it to be different, but you don't know what different is, and then you're faced with that, with this child that's sitting there eating wrapping paper. And I thought, wait, like different is whatever I make it. And so that was the moment that I started I'm a list maker. And I journal, but I don't journal what my day was like. I journal kind of more in a list type way, goals, aspirations. And so I started to create a list in my journal of what I wanted Christmas to look at from my kids' perspective.
Yes.
So, but it wasn't until I gave birth to a child and went through that first Christmas. And I remember sitting there on the couch and I'm like, God, that means that everything I get to create. So different, what do I want different to be? It can be anything I want. And that was game changing. That was a process of it happening over time, but really it was very poignant at that moment where like, holy shit.
Yes.
I'm in the driver's seat here. So
that is life-changing for every situation that we choose to apply that to.
And it's applicable to every situation.
Everything, so moment by moment. And I knew it could be different. Hello.
Right. And now I get to choose what different means. I mean, so it may be something completely different for me than for you, but that's because we got to create it. And how cool is that? So I know when my kids leave the house and they move out on their own, there's certain things, there's certain like checklists I wanted to check off that they had that I didn't, or that maybe, that I wanted them to have, or so that when they struck out on their own, they didn't feel alone. And they felt grounded, and they had tradition, and they had skills. And so I took some things that I learned that I was glad that I had learned growing up, and I wanted to make sure they knew those things. And then the things that I had to fumble with, and I wanted them to learn those things. So my kids leave the house with a toolbox and the ability to fix stuff, which is something I learned out of necessity because we were below poverty level. And if you wanted the TV to work, or you wanted to hook up cable, like I had to know how to do stuff. I had to fix toilet. I just knew how to do stuff. And I loved that I knew how to do things, and that I was very resourceful to do things. So that's something that I learned, that I turned around. I thought, well, I want my kids to be resourceful and know how to do things. I wanted them to know how to clean everything in the house. They can decide not to, but they know they have the skill to be able to do that. I want them to have a toolbox, because you don't realize how much you need a hammer until you don't have one. And, I wanted them to have tradition, so that when they had their first Christmas, they weren't sitting alone with, nothing in their apartment and a thumbtack holding up a stocking from Dollar Tree that you burn the letters on crooked, which was my first Christmas. And it was not a whole lot of fun. Sure. So if you buy a stocking from the Dollar Tree and you burn the letters on, I want it to be like the best burnt stocking you've ever had, and I want it to be good thing. So, you get to figure out what different means. So that Christmas I thought, okay, what are times of the year that are important to me? What are pivotal times in life that are going to be important to kids? What are things that I struggled with that I want them to struggle with less? And I got to outline what different looked like for me. But we all did.
Yes, and I just kind of have this feeling, Jen, that everyone who meets you walks away with a little bit of a dose of that, of like, hey, you're okay. I'm here for you. And by the way, everything could be a little bit different if you wanted to.
Yeah. Well, isn't that like the truest statement ever?
Yes, I think so.
That's some of that with depression and with anxiety. Okay, well, what do you know what the root of this feeling is? What's the dark place coming from? What triggered the anxiety? And when you find that out, well, how can you make that different? Because you could minimize your triggers. Yes. And we do have the ability to do some of that. And some of it may be medication and maybe therapy. Maybe lots of it. No matter
what it is for them, yes.
No, but you need to make it different. So what does different look like to you? I don't know.
I have one more question for you, my dear. What do you find to be sacred?
My family. My memories. Who I really, really am inside. That's very sacred.
Yes.
And my struggles. Because here I am, I think I'm pretty okay. And I know I'm always going to be a work in progress, but I'm pretty okay. And so that's very sacred. Everything I've gone through is sacred to me.
Now, as they say, no mud, no lotus, right?
Yeah.
Jen, you are one badass warrior princess. That's the name of the book. Hello, my name is Warrior Princess, and I'm going to have a link to that in the show notes. Thank you so much for this time together.
Thank you.
And for those who want to come hang out with you besides the book, where can they come find you?
The easiest thing is just to go to jenntaylor.net, and it's JENN, Taylor. I have the most New England Wonder White bread name ever. So just go to jenntaylor.net, and there are links to all social media. There's a contact form on there, and basically you can jump onto whatever social media you prefer.
Yeah, you're everywhere. It's great.
Yeah, it should be pretty easy to find me. I have a podcast, and everything is Jenn Taylor rerouting, because everything in my GPS is rerouting me. I'm like, shit, everything's rerouting. So you never know what direction life's going to take you in.
It's a great name.
So that's pretty much the where you can find me.
I adore you. You are a bit of rocket fuel for the soul. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Sacred Psychology Podcast. I pray you found some inspiration and empowerment to go out and make this life the most fulfilling possible. You can follow Sacred Psychology on Facebook and YouTube. If you haven't yet, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Tag us on social media and let us know what you think as well. Please note that the information provided is not meant to convey professional, psychological, or medical advice. If you could use such services, I highly recommend seeking them out from someone you trust. To get in touch with me personally or to see how we might work together, please check out ariatherapy.com or talesfromatrapezoid.com. Until next time, everyone.